fellow bookworms to Tibra's Den. My name is Whitney, and today we are going to be talking about some of my reads that are Indian mythology based. So I read the second half of the series for the Tiger's Curse series by Colleen Houck, and the last book like completely wrecked me for sure, but it was so enjoyable. The whole series was really enjoyable, so I'm excited to kind of recap the first three books and then talk more in depth about the last three books, and then to kind of tail on to that series. After I finished it up, I went ahead and read Kaikeyi by Vaishnavi Patel. And yeah, absolutely love this one too. Not quite as much as the Tiger's Curse series, but this was more true to Indian mythology, where the other one was more just had Indian mythology elements sprinkled throughout. But either way, very, very enjoyable. All of these got 5 stars for me, so definitely can't go wrong. And I know Kaikeyi's been all over booktube recently, and I'm so glad that I read it because I definitely did not miss out on anything that way. Really, really enjoyed this one. So we'll go ahead and start with the Tiger's Curse saga, and then we'll talk about Kaikeyi at the end. But as always, before I do, if you can remember to give this video a like, it really does help out the channel. And also don't forget to subscribe. We just hit 100 subscribers, so please help me continue to grow and hit the bell notification so you don't miss out on a thing. But let's go ahead and jump in. So the Tiger's Curse saga by, like I said, Colleen Houck. This one, there's 5 books in the main series, and then there's a short little novella that goes back to when the tigers originally got cursed. So it follows these 300-year-old princes, and they were cursed to be tigers. And so along comes Kelsey, and they're kind of having to work together to find these 4 gifts for the goddess Durga, and that will break the curse. And each time they get a gift, then the men can stay men, not tigers, for a little bit longer. Initially, it's 24 hours, 20 not 24 hours, 24 minutes a day. Then it goes, to 6 hours, and so they just gain time every time they find a gift. And then there's also talk about 5 sacrifices, but that really doesn't come up until later. You learn about the 5 sacrifices, I think, at the towards the end of the 4th book. But yeah, just an amazing series. It is kind of young adult. There is like a love triangle. The relationships are a little bit immature and dramatic. But if you like the Vampire Diaries and Twilight and such, these, I think, I've never read the Vampire Diaries books. I've only seen the show, but I read the Twilight books, and I've seen the movies multiple times. And so this one I think was done way better. Of course, it's not vampires, it's tigers. But I just thought it was really well done. Ate up like the teenage love triangle drama for sure. Just really, really enjoyable overall. So I'll kind of go through each one just briefly. In this first one, so each gift also has um, like an elemental aspect tied to it. And so this first one is kind of the earth element, and they're having to go. And so it's Ren and Kelsey, which Ren is one of the brothers. He's the older brother. And it's kind of how Kelsey got drawn into this. And I thought that aspect was done very, very well, because you have this ordinary girl, and a lot of like these, fantasy, like grand adventure type books, you have this ordinary person that gets like drawn in, but it's like their old life just completely goes away. And that wasn't the case for Kelsey. Like, she still had ties to the ordinary world. And I really liked how that was done because it made it feel more real. And so initially you have Kelsey and Ren meeting, and then they go on the first quest together. And so they get that first gift. And so that's kind of the premise of this. And, obviously feelings develop and yada yada yada. So but really, really good. Like, I loved it so much. I immediately jumped into the second book, which is Tiger's Quest. And this is the book my husband and sister-in-law had picked out for my 25 days of Bookmas books, and I'm so glad they did. I mean, this is by far my favorite series in a long while. And so in this one, you have Kelsey now working with Ren's brother Kashan. And so they're going on the quest for the second one. And I believe this one is the air element that plays a part into this one. And you'll learn why they're going on this quest together if you read the series. But yeah, of course, Kashan starts to develop feelings for Kelsey. And so there is that kind of love triangle aspect. But I really liked how Kelsey really stayed true to kind of the choices she made. Initially it was like, no, like, there was no, like, it wasn't like cheaty feeling at all. Like, she, I mean, towards the end, kind of a little bit, just because of what's going on. But I like how she honored the commitments she made to each of the brothers in turn, essentially. And so, yeah, this one was really, really good. I really enjoyed this one as well. Um, Honestly, absolutely love one of the brothers over the other, and probably the one that's not quite as popular. And then we have Tiger's Voyage, which at the time was my favorite. This, of course, is the third one. And so in this one, they're going on the quest together. Um, and this one is the water element, but it also has these 5 dragons, and each of the dragon kind of has like an element aspect to them as well. Which this was, like I said, the whole dragon aspect was my favorite. Of course, we're getting deeper into the love triangle at this point. And so very dramatic, but really enjoyable at the same time. Like, absolutely love this one. So those were the 3 that I had. Well, the third one my husband picked up for me because he's awesome like that. But they didn't have the last 2 in the series or the little novellas, so I had to order those and I had to wait. So I ended up starting to read the other books I needed to read last month, and so I wanted to start with these next 3 right off the bat for July. I was planning on just reading the 4th one, which is Tiger's Destiny, and then working on some of my other reads, but that obviously did not happen. Like, this series is so binge worthy, and there's actually a little like warning blurb on each of the books, and says, warning, these books may cause you to forget anything else exists until you turn the last enthralling page, and then you'll want to start all over again. That's by Bree Despain, author of the Dark Divine trilogy, and I completely agree. Like, once I was reading these, like, I could not put them down. So this one, of course, is the fire element. And this one, again, you kind of have them working together, but the relationships are very, very strained at this point because of the love triangle. And then some hard choices need to be made at the end. And this is one where they start at the end, you kind of get the conversation about the 5 sacrifices as well. But I really like this one too because we had Anamika introduced. And so you kind of have this separate sort of love triangle, even though it wasn't really. Um, and I really enjoyed this one and how it was done and everything. Like, absolutely love this so much. And it has a phoenix, which I really like that element. Like, it has so many, not just Indian mythological elements, but other elements as well, which was really, really enjoyable. But I really enjoyed Anamika in this as well. And that's where, once she was introduced, kind of my feelings on the brother I was rooting for changed a little bit, because I realized I was shipping that brother with Kelsey just because I really liked that brother, and not necessarily because Kelsey and him were a match. But in this one with Anamika, it was like, okay, now I'm rooting for this brother and Anamika, which I really love this brother, which I'm not gonna say who it is because that way, no spoilers. But yeah, this was a really, really good one as well. And so, of course, with the 4th gift, they're kind of, the curse is broken, but there's still one more sacrifice that needs to be made, essentially. And so, how this one ended, that was the series basically. It could have ended there. She did not need to write this next book, but I am so glad she did. So this next book is called Tiger's Dream. It is 814 pages, and I flew through this like nobody's business. Could not put it down. So in this one, you have the brother that I was rooting for, and he is down with Anamika, and they're kind of going through time, and they play a role in how the quests played out in each of the other books. So they're kind of going through time to make sure that everything is set up for the events that take place in the other four books, which just the way it was done, I mean, it was so amazing. It was a little confusing because you got these time loops and such, but it was so amazing. And it's kind of the story of this brother's, his whole life, before, during, and after the events in the other four books. And uh, in this book, it wrecked me. Towards the end, I was absolutely bawling. I loved everything about it. I loved how those time loops were done, and kind of this conversation about destiny and choice, and like, do I still have a choice because it's already happened? And because it's already happened, like, I know, like, this happens. Like, it was just very confusing, like, too big brain for myself as far as the conversation about time and looping and such, but so, so good. And you do have a little bit of drama. I will say there's definitely a trigger warning in this one for sexual assault and kidnapping and such. And at times, like when he was kind of going back to the past and such, it felt a little draggy in certain moments, but not really. Like, it was just, I think, because of the size of the book, it's like, okay, well, how does this have to do with the overall plot line? But it was so important to kind of the love story aspect of that, not just the overall plot line of them. But basically, I mean, this one's so big because you're having each aspect of the other four books, like each quest, kind of interwoven into this one. But this is the crowning jewel of the series for sure. Like, it didn't need to be written, but it's the only book that matters in my mind. But at the same time, without the other books, this one wouldn't make sense. So they're all very much interwoven together, but this was by far my favorite. I've heard people refer to like a book hangover, and I don't think I've ever actually experienced one until this one, which actually kind of made it hard to read Kaikeyi too, because I was still feeling the effects of this book. So yeah, I mean, the whole series is amazing, and then you get to this one and you're like, forget those other books, like this is everything. But at the same time, like I said, everything's interwoven, so you need the other books in order to fully appreciate this one too. But absolutely amazing. Like I said, if you I can see people not particularly enjoying like the teenage, and they're not even really teenagers. I mean, Kelsey's 18 in the beginning, but then obviously, time goes on. And the princes, yeah, are cursed to be young, and then they lived as tigers, so there's a certain immaturity there too. But like the drama aspect, I thought was done well, and it was enjoyable. But the story aspect was absolutely amazing, and I love the quest. And it's kind of like, you have like Vampire Diary vibes with the love triangles and the brothers and such. Then you have Indian mythology and other mythology sprinkled throughout. And then you also have like this kind of Indiana Jones vibe with all the quests and such. Like, really, really good. Absolutely an amazing series. I'm surprised I've never heard of it before. So if you like kind of YA books and you like mythology and quests and such, these are definitely books to give a try. Like, they are absolutely amazing, especially that last one. And then I read the short little novella, which is Tiger's Promise and Tiger's Dream. So the first four are told from Kelsey's perspective, with other point of views kind of thrown in. Tiger's Dream is told from the brother's perspective, one of the brother's perspectives. Again, I don't want to say who because that will spoil the events that take place. Tiger's Promise, so they were cursed initially by Lokesh, and his daughter kind of played a role in that, Yusubai. And so this is told by Yusubai's perspective, and kind of her perspective of the events that had unfolded in order for the brothers to be cursed and such. So this one's really, really short, just over 100 pages. And this one, out of all of them, obviously wasn't as enjoyable. It's not as in depth, but it still was really fun to get that other perspective, um, and kind of a look at the events before the brothers got cursed. And I like that it was from her perspective because that played an important role. And in this one, you do have abuse. So that's something to keep in mind. Like, there are heavy things in these books as well, but all of these were absolutely amazing. Like, I strongly encourage this series. I mean, it's a thick series, but so good, and they're really easy to read. Like, you move through them really, really quickly. So that is the Tiger's Curse saga. Like I said, strongly recommend, especially if you like the YA like drama aspects, but it has, like I said, that mythology and that quest feel to it as well. So now we're gonna talk about Kaikeyi, which is based on the Ramayana, which I now want to get after reading this. I kind of read like a synopsis of it, and I was actually familiar with kind of the ending of the Ramayana. Sita and her, how she ends up getting like, has to prove her purity, and then she and her twins get banished, and then she comes back and she has to prove her purity again. Like, the whole thing. I was actually familiar with that from listening to the Myths and Legends podcast, which again I'll leave the information link down below. Um, I forget. I always forget who does the podcast. But again, it'll be linked down below. But I love that podcast. I listen to it to go to sleep a lot, and so they had talked about that portion of it. But Kaikeyi follows Rama's stepmom, and she's the one that banished him. So this is told from Kaikeyi's point of view, and kind of why she made that choice. Um, and it follows her from the time, she is a girl of about 12, and all through up until a point where she banishes him. And then the last chapter kind of has a little aspect of after he's banished and such. But I don't know. I, not being familiar with the Ramayana all that much, I really want to read it now, just to see, like, from what I gathered, certain events and such definitely fit with where the author went. But in my mind, it's like, how is she the bad guy in that story? Like, I think the author did a really, really good job of painting Kaikeyi as a mom and a woman, um, who's just trying to do, and the leader who's just trying to do the best she can for not only her family, but the kingdom and the women of the kingdom in particular, and the innocence of the kingdom. Um, I absolutely love this. Like I said, I was kind of suffering a little book hangover from Tiger's Dream, so I was struggling a little bit with this initially. It took me 3 days to read it, which normally it would have only taken me two. But I just took my time with it. I didn't try to force myself or anything like that. I just wanted to enjoy it, and I did. Like I said, still 5-star read, but I wish I had known a little bit more. And I wish the magic element had been a little bit more prominent. It feels a lot more political, and obviously, like, the religion plays a part of it, but you only get these glimpses of the gods as being real. And so I wish that was a little bit more prevalent. And Kaikeyi kind of has this magic, which I will say I noticed that's kind of a trend with the Asian kind of mythology, because in The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, there is a tie, like a bond, that she's has like these she can see these bonds between her and others around her, like the binding plane, I think is what she calls it. And you have that in The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. In the Tiger's Curse saga, Kelsey, there's also like ties between like Kelsey and Ren and the goddess and the tiger and such. There's like these ties that you can see and like, that you can feel too. Um and between like the brothers and such. So I think that's a thing. And in Daughter of the Moon Goddess, they didn't really have like that bond that tied them together, but they had these talismans. Um, Xingyin and the prince had these talismans that like alerted them if the other was a danger and such. So I think that's from what I gather, like I haven't obviously looked into it or anything like that, but just based on these reads I've been reading, that seems like a prevalent theme, like these bonds and the binding plane and such, like that tie people together, which I thought was really really cool. And so Kaikeyi has that magic, and she kind of has to learn like hard lessons revolving around that, and it is very political and is very feminist feeling. Like Kaikeyi, she is just dismissed time and time again because first she's a girl and then she's just a woman, and she's always overshadowed by the men in her life. But she ends up doing some great things despite that, and she's kind of forsaken by the gods too, which was kind of an interesting take. Like she's not under their influence, but she also doesn't get the help she needs. And I was excited because it does have a cast, a character list in the beginning, and I saw that Nidra, the goddess of sleep, was on there, which I think, where is it? Right here, there it is. So and I actually named the Nidra. My dog was named after the goddess of sleep because I originally got her for sleep disorders and such. So I thought that was really cool, and I liked how, in the end, you know, Nidra especially was, a more minor goddess, but she took the time to talk to Kaikeyi, and not just fully forsake her, which I thought was really really cool. But yeah, overall, like I said, it just kind of goes through Kaikeyi's life and everything that kind of led up to that point where she banished Rama, essentially. And again, I think it was necessary. At first, I was like, is this really necessary to go this far back? But it really was for the story as a whole. So it felt a little draggy in the beginning to me. Like I said, partly probably because I was having my little book hangover, but partly because it was a little draggy. And at first, I was like, I don't see how this is necessary. But it really was to show her bonds to her brother and her old kingdom, and then her bonds with her new kingdom and her family within that. And so I only marked 3 pages. I didn't mark very much, but the first page I marked was, I thought it was really important because it shows that family aspect and that love that she had for all 4 boys. Because basically, you have the 3 queens, and the Kalshalya, she had Rama. Kaikeyi birthed Bharata, and then Sumitra had the twins. But they're all very close, and so they raised the boys together, and they're all essentially the boy's mother. So it's very, very close knit. And so the first one, they're playing, and there's this whole family moment, and it was just so beautiful. And you see the king, the kindness and the family man and the king and such. Um, and then, I marked another part where Nidra is talking to her for the first time, and she was, frustrated because the gods never listened to her, because she was forsaken essentially because of what she was going to do. And again, you have that talk about choice and destiny and such. And basically, she was always kind of going to play this part in Rama's destiny, essentially. And then again, I marked another part where she's talking to Nidra again. So, but yeah, it's very much like I said. It's very political, and there's very feminist aspects there as well. But I like seeing the changes Kaikeyi brought about, and then the bonds that she really had with her family. Um, and like I said, the fact that she can see like the binding plane and such, and she can see kind of Rama's influence on others. Like I'm just like, how was she the bad guy in the original epic? Like I don't understand it, which I want to read it now. I just put it on my wish list because I definitely want to read it now, and so hopefully I can pick that up fairly soon and get it read while this is still fresh in my mind. But even if I don't, I think what I'll do is once I ever do get that epic, I'm going to go ahead and read it and then probably reread Kaikeyi just so I'll be a little bit familiar with the original story of Rama and such. But just reading this by itself, though, absolutely amazing. Like you see, Kaiki knew what she was sacrificing by doing what she did, but she also knew the importance of it as well. So, um, yeah, absolutely love this one. Thought it was amazing. Although if I had to choose, obviously I would choose the Tiger's Curse Saga, just because it was easier to read and lighter. It's young adult and such, but Kaikeyi was absolutely amazing as well. So those are kind of my thoughts on those. If you've read, like I know a lot of people are reading Kaikeyi, so let me know your thoughts down below without leaving any spoilers. Or if you've ever read the Tiger's Curse Saga, or if you think you might pick it up, definitely let me know down below as well. I'll go ahead and leave you guys here. Happy reading, everyone. Bye.